Hello and welcome to Chatz, a television podcast, Season 9, Better Off Chatz. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by the man who looks like a possum in any shirt that he wears. And it's Magellan.
I really thought that I could finish this bite of peanut butter sandwich.
No.
I wish you could have seen
The speed with which you ate the peanut. You were like a possum eating peanut butter.
The amount of time I wasted trying to calculate if it was going to work or not.
That's so true, right? You think so much about if you could do it, but not if, and then you don't do it. And I love that.
It was like that fake, this is going to be a deep cut YouTube reference that you'll get, but the average person might not. There was this like fake speed run of Super Mario Bros.
Hell yeah.
Was posted to some,
with the pizza or whatever?
I think it was from Mexico, the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It was,
or Brazil. Yeah. I don't remember. But it was like so obviously fake, and the guy who was doing the speed run was like swigging Coke and eating pizza while he was doing it. And there were like moments where he'd pick up the pizza to try to figure out if he had enough time to do it. It was a lot like that. So people should check out that video to get a sense of what I just did.
It wasn't even like he was taking slices. He was like biting into the whole half of a pizza. Like this is
yeah,
fine.
just
this
a
is
big
normal.
floppy half of a pizza.
Yeah. Oh, that video is very good. We have a special guest this episode, Magellan.
That was me taking a swig of my Coca-Cola.
I'm making this as hard for you as possible.
I shouldn't be doing this on the pod. Who's our guest? What's their special name?
For this episode, we're joined by a person whose magnifluosity knows no equal. It's Six from Scanline Media, everybody.
Hello, friends and folks. I'm here to deal death.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Wrong show. Wrong show.
Yeah, hold on. I'm here to talk about it's a
I
Dota
was
2
thinking
podcast.
of the Garnet Wager.
Yes. Wait, yeah. Oh, God. Six and I, if you don't already know, have been friends for a while and have been podcast buddies for just as long. And, yeah, Six co-hosts The Garnet Wager, is co-founder of ScanlineMedia.com, podcaster extraordinaire, robot fan, and
robot.
Employee under capitalism, which are all the requirements to be on Better Off Chatz.
Yeah,
And really, if you want to be on a podcast with me, it's basically as simple as like talking to me a decent amount and liking some of the same things. The way Alan and I first podcasted together was that I was told to watch a show called The Genius. And I was like, sure, why not? And I watched the first episode and I was like, this is really good. And I messaged Alan like, hey, you sort of barely know me, but you seem cool. Let's do a podcast about this show I watched one episode of.
That's awesome.
And it's love at first sight. And now we're happily committed to several podcasts together, which is it's the millennial marriage. Yeah, as we've mentioned before, we're trying to get more guests here on Better Off Chatz because it's a show about work and office environments and capitalism, and we figured that we could have some friends on with some experience to talk about this very silly and very entertaining show. So Six, we have you on for our first episode tonight. We're going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 7, Get Happy with You, and then we'll have another guest on for Episode 8, You Are the Boss of Me, which will be after the break. We're going to start by talking about Get Happy, which was written by Michael Tieverbaugh, and it was directed by Gail Mancuso, iconic director on a lot of sitcoms, including Modern Family, Friends, Gilmore Girls, and 30 Rock. Get Happy originally aired May 5th, 2009. And Magellan, could you do me the honors of telling me what happened in this episode, please?
In this episode, Veronica tries to not be so cold, and Ted tries to befriend the older men at Viridian after the results of an office survey are revealed. And Linda's request for individuality in the office has unexpected results, and hilarity ensues.
Kind of, I think so. This is quite an entertaining episode. It's about morale, employee morale, which I think is something that we've all kind of had to deal with or talk about in a work environment at some point. Six, I can open them up with you. Have you, in any in specific memory, had to deal with this sort of the bosses don't think we're happy enough, we have to do more to look at and act happier, in your experience?
I mean, I get told to smile.
Yep.
Because I work in retail. And so that's actually, I am one of the people, listen, obviously the current circumstances around the world, especially in America, are bad, and I don't endorse them. But wearing a mask all the time means people don't tell me to smile, and that's all right.
Unexpected consequence.
Yeah. No, I would love to keep wearing a mask after this ends. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I work for a major retailer, and they have like routines to sort of like keep this from becoming a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think they're of mixed success, right? Like around the holidays, when they're making us work overtime all the damn time, they will, like cater food and stuff, and like that goes over pretty well. Like, oh hey, there's
smart.
you rented a taco truck and they're just sitting out back and making tacos for anyone. Like, yeah, no, we like that. But a lot of other stuff was just like, hey, we put stickers in the break room. I don't care. Why would I care about that?
Like stickers that have any sort of significance, or just you can have some stickers?
Oh, they're just some Listen, there's paper and there's stickers, and if you want to do some crafts, and I'm like,
in your 30-minute
I'm
mandated
30 years old. Like, are you kidding me? So I think those routines are of mixed success, but I think the larger thing is that there is a difference, right? Like when you're working retail, there is, I mean, they joke about this, but there is an expectation that you're miserable, and they just don't really care.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So they don't work as hard at the morale stuff, I would say.
Well, yeah, retail's a different environment where you're already you're facing the customer more than you're facing your company. So, your worst fear is a customer like reporting you for being unhelpful or rude or made a funny face at me when I asked them where the donuts were, stuff like that.
And I think the concern that is happening for Viridian in this episode is different than how things work in a retail environment, because the reason that they're making such a big deal about the survey is like if people are happier, then they're work more productively. But in a retail environment, it's like, what does that mean? Exactly. I don't know. Like productivity is not as important as like performance, and this sort of like
productivity is a weird thing to measure when you are constantly in a job like retail where you're dealing with constant interruptions.
Right.
Yeah. So it's harder to measure.
Right. And it's more about like, I don't know, like, you have to kind of manage these waves of people that crest and fall at different times.
The one office job I've ever actually had was I was working for a person who was selling stuff en masse on eBay. I was writing product descriptions and taking and photoshopping pictures for it.
Oh yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think like, listen, I was a lot younger. I was like 21, 20. And so it took me a while to be like, hey, all these products say not for resale. And at the end of every week, you just open up a briefcase full of money and give me my pay in cash. Is this legal?
Oh, God. Holy crap.
I'm not sure this is legal.
Oh, no.
That's awesome.
What kind of products? It was just like random stuff?
It was like hair, like cosmetics, like flat irons mostly.
Oh.
And some curling irons and stuff. Yeah. The owner, the business operator's wife ran a salon, and so could purchase these items at salon rates.
Oh,
and then
no.
resell them on eBay at a different
illegal.
Rate.
That does sound illegal.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
yeah.
Boy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So, and my only other good story from that is there are a lot of people that were doing that, right? And the moment I knew that I was made, that I was really good at my job, is when all the other people selling the same products started stealing my photos and my product descriptions.
Wow, there you go.
And with my product descriptions, I really went kind of buck wild, so it was pretty obvious.
That's funny. Like, what would you say if you're trying to sell a curling iron?
Well, the thing is, people don't really care. I mean, if the picture looks good And you have the basic part where you're like, okay, like new inbox, like here's our return policy, all that stuff. That's the part they care about. When you actually write a description, I figured out pretty quickly I could just do whatever the hell I wanted. I started describing flat irons as having like searing heat that could, purify your hair. I started kind of being poetic and ridiculous. Which again made it even more obvious that people were stealing my writing, because no sane person would do that.
That's funny.
Well, it sounds like you've definitely had some experience, at least in the realm of like trying to appeal to a customer base.
For sure.
And Magellan, I know as a teacher, you must deal with like having to put
on a
good
base.
I mean, a different kind of customer base, to be a little bit like glib, right? But also like management telling you to be nicer and make sure the kids like you, but also make sure they all get the right grades and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, this question of like morale is a really weird one in the context of being a teacher, because I mean, as with many things, it's sort of like, in a way, teachers are like, it's a performance profession in some ways. In some ways, teachers are like middle managers of their students, if you want to be like really grim capitalist about it. And so, I don't know, there is this sort of like adult team level of morale where it's like, oh, we've got snacks in the teacher's lounge, and like it's the history team's turn to pick the snacks this month or whatever, which was a real thing.
And I've seen it. I've been in at least one of your teachers' lounges, and I can't say that it's exactly like the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it is what it is.
It's people just rushing to hit deadlines and be like, hey, what's up? Hey, good? Okay, bye.
And so there's efforts to like kind of decorate it up and like decorate your space and all this stuff about the cubicles. Like, obviously, you got to decorate your classrooms, but then it becomes an expectation of like, why didn't you put the bulletin boards up or whatever? So there's kind of the like adult morale stuff, but then also the managing of you to make student morale good, which is soul crushing. So like, it's kind of this weird middle space. But yeah, I definitely have had, I mean, like, I've surveyed students about like, how do you feel about XYZ? I've responded to surveys about how happy or fulfilled I am, and those sorts of things happen. But I've never really seen like much immediate action come out of things like that.
No, definitely.
The way that it does in this episode, yeah.
I sort of have. When I worked in retail, the only thing that they would like push us to do more of was upsell people on, like make sure you get your flu shot, and like every flu shot that our store got would like be really good. That was like my pharmacy experience. My sales job was obviously my biggest like one of the hardest things for me was keeping morale up. And I specifically remember having to learn the hard way that when your boss asks what you think of the job in like your first week, you can't say it's bad. You can't say like, I think that this I didn't even say it was bad. I was kind of like, it could use some work. Like you guys could make this more efficient if you just did XYZ.
Right.
And what I actually specifically said at the time was, I think it's a little bit demoralizing for some people, because it's basically a sales job on a research study. And my boss took, and I have to not be clear specific with anything here, but they took so much offense to that, being like, why did you say demoralizing? I know. And then she like brought it up in a meeting later and was like, I noticed that Alan said that this job can be demoralizing. Does anyone else feel that way? Which is just disgusting.
Sucks. Oh, that sucks. Wow.
Yeah, it really did. And it left a bad taste in my mouth. And I'm really happy to be past that place, because they don't care about morale in government. They're just like, you work a very easy job and make enough money. You please live your own life outside of work. We encourage you not to. I'm not encouraged to be friends with my boss, and I'm not encouraged to act happy, thankfully, at my job. So that's one of my big pluses here.
That's kind of freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in schools about being solutions oriented is how it's phrased, and it's held against you. Maybe not explicitly, but it's people think of you a certain way if you're not solutions oriented.
Indeed.
Yeah. So anyway.
So this episode, we have the Viridian Dynamics ad. Well, not at the beginning this time. I checked. I made sure I knew this, but the ad this week is about teamwork, or cooperation, which seems a little bit different from morale. I know you mentioned in your notes that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think it's a little misaligned. Like, it feels like the whole episode is about kind of interpersonal relationships in the workplace, sort of, but it's really about this larger theme of, like, morale and how happy you are. So it does seem kind of weird that their choice was to say that the theme is teamwork when it could have been, like, happiness or morale or something like that. But I did like the line where that commercial ends with it saying, "Teamwork. It keeps our employees gruntled."
Yes.
I thought that was
a line that hits very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple different plot lines. We have the sort of like the different ways that Veronica tries to like split up the office based on their interests, because she's told by Linda that like people want to feel like a little bit more individual here and not feel like cogs in a machine. And so so Veronica naturally takes that and separates everybody into 4 predetermined personalities.
4 different cogs.
4 different cogs in one big machine. And they are the following: the Green Bay Packers, space, cats, and classic cars. It's pretty good satire that these are all definitely things that I know I've had coworkers who are into, like, either, or at least football, space, cats, and cars in general, where I'm like, oh yeah, that is somebody's thing. But those are all very inoffensive 4 things that would never interfere with your work. So I thought that was really funny. I'm curious what each of you fall into if you had to be in this.
Yeah, of the 4 genders, which one is mine?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm space. It's pretty easy for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Why are you space?
Because I love space. Last night at like 1 a.m., I woke up and tweeted a bunch about how cool stars are. Like, I'm helpless.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
No,
what do you think of
it's really
Pluto
not.
not being a
thank you.
planet anymore. Does
I
that
mean,
bother you?
listen, there is a romance to the idea of Pluto being a planet, but dwarf planet's a pretty good name, and it is true it hasn't cleared his neighborhood. I can't argue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Pluto not being a planet was a very what's it called? A very like 2009 space debate. It's like, oh, remember Pluto not being a planet? That was like the conversation.
It was like water cooler talk. I mean, you could start any conversation with like, so here Pluto's not a planet anymore for the next like year.
And you had a bunch of you had people being like, so what is it now? My very excellent mother just baked 9?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Stupid.
I can't remember that. I'm gonna forget all the
That's
planets
too hard.
now.
Exactly.
Alan, what's your thing?
What are they again?
Packers?
Packers, space,
Cats,
old
and
cars, or
classic
cats?
cars.
Yeah, probably space too. I'm between space and cats. Kind of depends on the mood, but as we see in this episode, being the cats person really puts you in a box. It really puts you in like a scary box.
I'm sorry.
I would
do
love
have
to sit at that lunch
happens to
table.
everybody.
Yes, I mean, exactly. That's the point, right? But at least the space conversations are like, oh, is Pluto a planet? Or like, we're going to make Houston, we have a problem jokes. Like, these are fun bits. But the cat people quickly become obsessive. On the one hand, they do give each other cats, or they give Linda a cat.
I would be a cat person. I mean, the pictures are really cute, and your friends get you a kitten. That sounds nice.
I think one of our listeners, Nick, actually sent us something or a GIF of the scene where Linda walks up to her desk and sees all the cats, and it was like day 1 on the internet. Just there's cats everywhere.
That's funny.
I do have to correct myself before it ruins my life forever. That this is just my reputation. It's served 9, not baked. Saturn doesn't start with a B.
Oh,
No one.
Whoops.
How are you supposed to be the space person?
To be honest, I just know the planets. I never really use those mnemonics. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mnemonic is like more confusing. I'd have to think of
They
the
often
planets
are.
first to think of the mnemonic.
Like, I never use "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." I just use PEMDAS because that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
easier,
I do
right?
use King Philip came over for good sex, though.
Just for fun. You just see that one doesn't relate to anything. You just like saying it.
Kingdom, phylum, order, class, genus, species.
Oh, but
King
then that's one
Philip
of those
came
ones where it's
over
like,
for good sex. Oh, family. I
Oh.
forgot family.
okay.
Family, genus. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the like direction of this plot goes, because this episode kind of like wanders.
I mean,
around,
so there are
and
three. Well, there are like 3 clear plots that are happening, and we could sort of decide which ones we want to talk about first.
Mhm.
I'm also curious, 6 you picked this episode. Do you have experience with Better Off Ted? Like, have you seen the whole thing?
No, I don't. I was like, I just sort of looked at it and was like, oh, it's an episode where everyone's bummed out. I should probably be on this one.
Okay, cool. I think we would have picked this one for you if you were like, pick one. So that's pretty fun. So maybe you can help us decide where to start. We've got 3 plots. There's basically the survey results send different characters off in different directions. Veronica learns that people don't like her because she's very severe. And so she spends the episode trying to get people to like her more. Ted learns that he's not that popular with old men because he's young and handsome and successful, and they're all jealous of him. So he tries to get old men to be his friends.
I hate these old men.
Yeah. And then Linda is dealing with the fallout of the sort of like restructuring and culture building to create more team dynamics and boost morale. So, Six, where do you want to start?
So I know this is a large degree of me projecting, but I really enjoyed the storyline of Ace Icon Ted.
Yes, thank you for saying what we're all thinking. When they're talking about how we all used to have affairs and like, I'm going to take you to a strip club, and he's like, no, I want to go home.
It's like, oh, you got the waitress's number. And he's like, yeah, I sure am going to take advantage of that.
I'm going to have sex with her tonight. Oh, God, I knew you were going to like that line. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll talk about Ted. So I thought it was pretty funny. That whole first scene where the guy is telling Veronica about the poll results or the survey results is like, I don't know if y'all felt this way, but I felt that it was like paced kind of badly. It was like slow, and I think it was edited poorly or directed not that great or something. I don't know. It was just off, but because the script seemed good, but then the lines were like, cut to this character, I will say my full line, and now there's like a 2-second gap. Cut to this character saying their response line that should have been faster.
Yeah, the pacing was odd.
Better Off Chatz not a very like. It's not always a snappy show. It can be, but especially when they introduce like tertiary side characters, you're just like, oh, you're just gonna say your thing and then we're gonna cut. Like, okay,
right.
I feel.
But there was some fun lines in that scene where Veronica's like, "Shut up, you little bean counter," and he's like, for the 3rd time, "Please don't call me that," or whatever. But then his whole thing to Ted is like, "You're good. You don't need to change a thing. It's just these old guys over 50." And Ted's like, well, you know, or what does he say? He's like, well, my father's over 50 and and there's a lot of jokes about how Ted's dad hates him. And then he ends up trying to flirt with, and get on the good side of Manny, who's like an older dude. So I'm curious what we think of this whole sequence where basically Ted like ingratiates himself with the middle-aged middle manager guys, and then it kind of like spins out of his control. What do we generally think of that plot?
I definitely the part at the beginning or the early in this when he's talking to Bob and he's trying to flirt with him and the guy's like, oh, you're firing me, like you're about to fire me. I've definitely like seen that sort of ageism in different job spaces where like especially people over 50 that work in retail, for example, are like, yep, any day now they're gonna replace me with an 18-year-old who works twice as hard, so I'm just gonna keep collecting checks until they do that. Or like people in like, you know, in government who are like, okay, you guys could clearly do better than me, but you're keeping me out of obligation and because of union contracts. So like that guy being ready to be fired was a little bit real. But you know, all of the like courting them stuff I think works because it's very funny how much they lean into like, these guys would have lived during Mad Men times and been like, it's so fun that we can like have affairs and like we go out and like drink during lunch breaks and go to like, even to me, I know people like even our age do this, but to go out to a restaurant for lunch seems weird to me. I'm like, why do you have that much time to like go eat and maybe drink?
Yeah,
and maybe
the part where they're like, we're going to go to a strip club tomorrow. It's like, how long is your lunch break? Because I get maybe like 25 minutes to.
No, there's just a strip club on the bottom floor of the building.
It's right next to the medieval fight
nice.
club. Yeah.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, so I thought that stuff was really strange, but I liked it because it just they don't pull any punches. Like Better Off Ted is always at its best when they're like, yeah, these guys just wanted like all sleep with wives, and then they do like the old white people party towards the end where they're all just like dancing in the office and their dance moves are extremely bad.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I found myself giggling a lot at this plot line.
Yeah, I thought that line was so like what you're saying. Where Better Off. This is the episode where they really, I think, are the most precise with the satire. I think it's honestly one of the best written episodes of what we've seen. But that part where the guy's like, "Oh, you would have loved it in the old days, Teddy. There was no such thing as sexual harassment." It's just like they totally are painting this caricature of this guy to get at what's wrong with this sort of like old Mad Men era mentality of being a business person.
Right. I think this show doesn't like boomers very much.
It is kind of anti-boomer, huh?
That seems like.
Yeah. It's
is
kind
there
of
other
interesting
stuff in the episode that made you feel that way, or in the show.
I mean, this is the only episode I've ever seen, so
Yeah.
Yeah, all the old men stuff definitely felt like, oh, we're joking about, like, those are the old style guys. We don't like them anymore. He's like, Ted, tomorrow we're taking you to lunch. Make sure you bring dollar bills and a lap. They just say stuff like that with their full chest because they've lived and been here long enough that they know they can get away with stuff. But the way that they talk about, like, oh, you didn't used to get people. These are definitely the types of men who would say, like, people didn't used to get offended about everything. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah.
Sensitive snowflakes kind of guys.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see kind of like how even the littlest bit of approval from Ted completely opens them up from being these downtrodden, everything sucks, to these openly we're getting drunk and hitting on people and craning our necks to look at women's butts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like they can flip on a dime, you know?
Yeah, definitely. But I think I believe it ends up working out for a while for Ted until he realizes that he has to be a boss again. And they're literally having a party in an office and he's like, get out of here. And then he touches his desk and he's like, why is this sticky? And they're like, oh. So he kicks them out and realizes that I actually kind of liked his character development here, where he's like, oh, I don't have to, not everyone has to like me. Like, part of Ted's character we're learning is that he desperately wants people to like him. Kind of opposite of Veronica in a way, who's just like, I don't care that nobody likes me. And so he's learning that he can be like that, and that doesn't make him a bad person.
They sort of parallel each other a little bit, right? Because Ted, like, it just inherently wants everybody to like him. He admits it at the beginning of the episode. And his growth arc, like you're saying, is being able to say, yeah, there are going to be some people out there that hate me. Whereas Veronica at the beginning is like, if people are scared of me, it sounds like it's their problem.
Yeah.
And then she takes the time at the end of the episode to go talk to Phil. And she does it in a pretty callous Veronica way. But like, she tries to let him down easy, you know, in a way that shows that at least out of all of this, she has developed some shred of empathy. So it's kind of funny that like Ted and Veronica each kind of get a little bit of the other person as they go through their plots.
And also, I mean, like, so I don't have the context of the larger show, but it seems like comments are kind of in general a new thing for her. And her final bit is like, and no more comments unless it's really your best work, which does seem like a step for her.
Yeah.
True. That's a good point. That moment where she kind of like reflects on it and says, well, there are some times where people are worthy of praise. Yeah, that feels like growth.
Mm-hmm. And you get to watch Lem be like, screw this, and rips up his best work. And then she says, and let's do best work. And he's like, damn.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Phil and Lem and just in the Veronica plot, because I'm actually curious about, for both of you, when Veronica praises that, she's like going around and praising everybody. She's got her hair down, and I think they shoot it pretty well, where it's like, okay, she's pretty, but also this is really unsettling that she's like got such long hair and she's letting it down. I don't know.
It's almost Medusa-esque, yeah.
Yeah, and then she's saying these like weird compliments, like, "Oh, I love what you've done with the what hair you have left," and stuff like that.
The balding guy, yeah.
Yeah, and then Portia de Rossi does such a great job of making every smile look so painful. And then she goes and like compliments Phil and Lem in these very vacuous ways, where she's like, "Oh, this is so great, good job," and they're like, "Oh, we didn't turn on the microscope." Or whatever.
Yeah, I love that part. Yeah. And then she repeats it verbatim again. She's like, this is so good. Great job. Thank you for showing me this.
Yeah. And Phil and Lem react totally differently. And I'm curious what both of you felt about like, who are you more so when you're like praised for something? Are you the Phil who's like, yes, feed me? Or are you the Lem who's like, no, that praise must be wrong. I'm going to disprove everything that you're saying about me. Because I think both of those are like definitely pretty relatable.
I can jump in because basically I think at my most confident I'm definitely a Lem in that case. Because Phil is like, oh, I'll take every single compliment you can get, and I've definitely been like that with some things before. Like I like to be complimented. I think it's valuable to compliment your employees. Because that is actually a legitimate way to boost morale if it's sincere, and you're not just like, wow, you did good, thank you for doing good. But ultimately, I land more on the Lem side of like, he's not just saying like, I'm gonna dismantle all your compliments. He's more saying like, I only accept compliments that feel legitimate. Like I feel like I earned them.
Right.
I want you to tell me that like like he said, my best project is good. I don't want you to tell me that like, the RNA slide is really good because like a grad student could do that. It takes 5 seconds to do that. So I think that's where I tend to now land as an adult of like, I don't want to just get comments for no reason. That just feels, like you said, vacuous and empty to me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a modified Lem where I get the compliment, and then even if it's sincere, I assume it's probably not really sincere, and they hate it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm there. I'm with both of you that in the Lem space, but I did really relate to Phil. His line where he's like, hey, some of us don't have to be married to my wife. Like, just like, I don't know, that, not that I, I'm in a horrible marriage or whatever, but I just thought that was pretty funny.
Magellan, you can talk to us,
good
right?
Phil line.
You're allowed to say these things.
No, that's not what I meant. But you have moments where you're like, come on, I'm having a bad day. Like, I want to feel good.
Just say nice things to me, please.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I feel like the character development in both of these episodes is kind of a little bit forced here and there, where like we keep getting reminded that Phil hates his wife, and it is very funny the way that he hates his wife because Six, I don't want to like tease you with my own read, but I definitely like see a bit of queerness between Phil and Lem. It's less so in this episode, but in earlier episodes they were definitely like, I like you more than everyone else that I've ever been around, in a way that feels like more than just friendly. So there's that, but then also like Ted doesn't like his dad. Ted now suddenly, we'll talk about this in episode 2, but he hates his wife like a lot, and it's like, why?
His ex-wife, yeah.
His ex-wife. Why are we being like fed this character development that I don't need? Like I don't.
Yeah.
When's Linda gonna finish her children's book? That's what I.
Yeah, it is. They do hammer the Phil hating his wife stuff a lot, and in the second episode, I think it's less relevant. In this one, at least, it sort of kind of explains like why he's falling so madly in love with Veronica so quickly, and why he swoons over things like when she says, "And good job having a wife," or whatever.
Good for you for having a wife.
Yeah,
which is what I say whenever I meet someone that's married. By the way,
it is kind of a rehash of like episode 2, where we also get that plot beat of Phil is like attracted to Veronica, and she uses that against him or whatever. Yeah. So they're kind of rehashing that territory a little bit.
This show is making me not trust my bosses. I know you already shouldn't, and we just came off of, what was it, 6? Like International Bosses Day, which is a fake holiday that nobody should be celebrating. But I like that this show is like, corporate structure inherently corrupts everybody up top and all progressively going down to be more competitive, to be ruthless, and to be unempathetic. Whether it's Veronica not knowing how to compliment people naturally, or whether it's Ted like not knowing how to stop competing against people. I think that's like one of the show's major themes.
And it's interesting that like, so the show, at least in this episode, I assume it's a larger thing, portrays Ted as being a pretty good boss, right?
Yeah, better than at least Veronica.
Yeah, he's pretty well liked. Yeah.
And it is interesting that the show's idea, what the show is saying, like, hey, the people who make the best bosses are desperate people pleasers, and that's not great either, is it?
Yeah, right.
There's an inherent paradox to that.
Yeah, I think the show, one of the things that it's trying to do is deconstruct that idea of Ted as the sort of like boss that the employees love, but in actuality, he's just kind of an empty suit who like does what people ask him to do or does what people are going to like. And it gives him good results on these surveys, but at the end of the day, is that really a great boss? I don't know.
Kill all bosses. I I also want to conclude by talking about my favorite plot of this episode, though, which is Linda dealing with the different cliques that form as a result of these new categorizations that they're placed into.
Categorizations, huh?
Yes.
Houston, we have a problem.
I loved
so funny
that
to me
scene.
that he kept saying it over.
They're like, please stop. We get it. She's disappointed by the fact that she's given the categorization of being a cat lover, because she's like, hey, Jill and I were literally talking last night with our buddy Jim about like dating apps and the whole idea of like picking your interests on an app like that, and how frustrating it is that like coffee is considered an interest, because like coffee is not a hobby for most people. Coffee is just a thing that you need to survive, and like a thing maybe that you enjoy occasionally, but it's not a defining aspect of anyone's personality, I don't think. So the cats is in the same category where it's like, you're a cat person. What does that mean about you? Does it mean anything? Like, what kind of conversations can you really have about cats?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this was my favorite plot of the episode was Linda's plot, and I think what is compelling about it is it sort of gets at the heart of like when you're in a workspace and you're trying to make connections with people, you start from like such shallow places, and like it can sometimes be the littlest thing that makes you think like, okay, this person's cool, like wow, they watch Game of Thrones too, or like you just
the stuff
find,
that gets you to friends with people at work, like water cooler stuff.
Well, and it's interesting.
You find like the thing that's like the thing that you share, and then they're sort of exaggerating that and heightening that in this episode.
It's interesting because I feel like the 4 different cliques kind of represent different angles on which people have these, right? Like, the cat one is like, it's such a basic question that people treat it like a gender binary. Are you a cat person or a dog person, right? It's so low level. But then you have the ultra specificity of the Green Bay Packers fans. And then you have like the space, which is kind of a stand-in for nerds, which is like, okay, that is sort of midway between, where it is broad, but it is also sort of self-selecting. There are people who would specifically not want to be space people. And then there are car people. I feel like each one of them kind of represents like a way of thinking about hobby in a way that I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's true. And they also represent, because you interact with those differently, right? Like cat people do what they do in this episode, where Linda's like, oh my gosh, have you seen the one where he flushes the toilet or whatever? And space people are talking about like the things they've learned, and Green Bay Packers people are talking about the game, and classic cars people are like, check out this car, or like, man, I would love a throttle inside my G2 or whatever they say.
Whoa, that's kinky, man.
Slow it down here. That's for the Patreon episodes, Magellan, please.
I wish we'd gotten more with the other 2 cliques. I would have loved if there was just a recurring bit of like Green Bay, the Green Bay people walking through and being like I'm going to kill Coach Jones. And being like, okay.
They squandered that.
Yeah.
But I liked all the cat stuff was so good. And I loved the exchange. I loved the line from Sheila. By the way, the woman who's playing Sheila plays Stevie's mom in Malcolm in the Middle, which is a funny crossover. But anyway, I loved her line where she's like trying to figure out there must be some greater significance to the cats thing. It's almost like people who like horoscopes feel like this to me. When people try to make a big deal about horoscopes and they're all bullshit, and it's like, what's your sign? Oh, you're a Scorpio. That makes sense. Or like, oh, I wouldn't have expected you were a Scorpio. It's always one of those 2 responses.
You're a Virgo. Bye.
Goodbye. I'm not talking to you anymore. We can't date.
And then it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, oh, well, this. And so she's trying to make sense of cats in that way, where it's like, oh, I must have been assigned cat person for a reason. Cats are quick, smart, and independent, just like you, me, Debbie, and Bruce. I really laughed hard at that line.
Comedy's not lost there, yeah.
Yeah, because it gets at that thing of like, people are really desperate to kind of find, whatever the thing is that they can relate with other people on, and also really want to feel that thing makes them unique. And I'm not separate from that, not to speak about it as if I'm like above that or something, but I think that line just gets to the heart of how kind of silly a lot of those things can be.
And it doesn't view all of that identifying with like cat traits negatively, because Linda instead finds an actual, even like the Ted voiceover is like, Linda found a community of people that have similar interests to her.
Yeah, she made friends.
Which is exactly what she wants, right? She wants to like feel a sense of community and feel like she's part of something bigger and not part of not just as a cog, but as something that's like, we actually like this of our own accord, not by what the work defines for us as being cat people. But naturally, you've given people interests, and you've given them separate interests, and what you're making inherently is clicks. Because she tries talking to the space people at lunch, and they keep making Houston, we have a problem jokes. And all the cat people feel super betrayed. They're like, you said you were a cat person. You can't be both. As someone with 18 million hobbies, I felt offended by this. I was like, no, I need both at the same time.
It sort of reminded me of like at the school that I work at, kids get put into houses like Harry Potter type things.
Bummer.
That
Big bummer, dude.
Have names. They're named after like historical figures. So there's like 4 houses.
Wait. We gotta. What are the houses?
Know who the figures are?
Yeah, what are the houses?
Well, I guess they're not all historical, but I hope this doesn't enable anybody to look up where I work, but we can figure it out. Probably not. The houses are it's Obama, Clemente, Sotomayor, and Morrison, like Toni Morrison.
Oh,
interesting.
So you get like put into one of those houses. And then there's just a lot of stuff about like, when there's like a full grade meeting, it's like, hey, shout out your house or whatever. And it's all, and when we do teacher training at the beginning of the year, like we read a thing that basically says, yeah, this is all made up, but that's how it works. If you just tell someone like, hey, you're in this group now, then it has meaning to them. If you just say that it exists.
I mean,
and it kind of is crazy to me, but it works.
Yeah, it's like a basic, human like psychological effect. If you take groups of people who've never met each other and you say you're in group A and you're in group B, one of the first thoughts people in group A will have, man, fuck group B. It just happens.
Yeah, group B sucks. Yeah, exactly. Right. And this felt just like that it's like, what, you're at the space table, but you're a cat person and there's a cat person table. You're betraying us right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of both how we were separated by 2 houses in middle school.
Right, that happened to us too, yeah.
Yep, and then also there's a great SpongeBob moment where I forget if they're like making a football team or what, but it's an episode of SpongeBob where they're like, we have red team, blue team, and gold team, and then immediately once all of them separate, there's like a big jacked guy in gold team who's like, gold team rules. Like just, I now identify as gold team because I've been told that is what I am.
Yeah, the weird thing for us in middle school was like the houses changed by grade, which was odd, and then the house that you're in determined like which teachers you had and what schedule you had. Yeah. So you like, had this knowledge of this other half of the grade that existed that you never interacted with. And so you just have these ideas about like, yeah, fuck those guys.
Didn't they split the house, like the floor in half? So like all of the one team would be on one half of the floor? Because I don't remember going to the other half.
Either they split the floor or it was on different floors or something, but there was you had different teachers. I know for sure.
True.
So
and also you had those collars that they give dogs so they can't leave their yard.
Yeah, the shock collar.
Yeah, it shocked you if you went to the wrong
that was weird in hindsight. I guess our school was built on, or our high school was built in. Didn't it used to be a prison? I think so.
Yes, it was. No, it was built by a prison architect. Our high school also had houses, but it was like house 1, house 2, and house 3. Like they gave up on it being any sort of cultural thing, and it was purely organizational.
I believe I was house 2.
I think I was also house 2.
My high school only had 2 houses, which were lunch A and lunch B. Which lunch period did you have? Yeah. And I was, I believe, the only person who was both lunches because I just always skipped I just skipped and went to both lunches every day.
You were like Linda.
I love to imagine that there are like people who knew you who meet and are like, yeah, 6 is so cool. I'm so glad that 6 is in lunch A. And then the other person is like, no, wait, 6 is lunch B. What are you
talking about?
I mean, listen.
Why are you lying to me, Gary?
I also carried around a monkey wrench in my backpack in high school. I was a character.
You were, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I wish that we were friends in high school. That's awesome.
I think the other hilarious line though, when the woman comes up to Linda and she's like, I just thought we were friends, cats of a feather. And she's like, what does that mean? She's like, we made shirts. If you had been there, you would have seen that he made shirts that say cats of a feather on them. Very silly.
We gave you a cat.
we gave you a whole cat, which it's a very cute cat, by the way. I'm glad
cat.
They cast that cat really well. Cat cast. But yeah, so she is not able to be in both clubs. And then how does her plotline end, basically?
The cat people vandalize her cubicle and they put cat poop in what they think is her car, but it's Veronica's car. And then Veronica and Ted catch her vandalizing Sheila's cubicle, and then they shut the whole thing down.
Yes. Okay.
And then it ends in the tag with everyone hating Linda because she took away all their individuality.
Now they all have to be cogs again.
Yeah.
And then finally we just get the Veronica Phil stuff. I'm glad the scene was brief, but Phil A is not a straight man, and B, I do see it as romantic the way he talks about I like Veronica and I like it when she compliments me. We've seen that multiple times in the show, which worries me because I hope it doesn't become any more of a plot. I hope this is done forever. Veronica doesn't need a romance. Phil doesn't need a romance other than Lem. This should be not even a moment of discussion.
I don't think it'll ever be a romance. I think they might do the joke again, but I don't think it'll ever be a romance.
Yeah. She shuts him down. She says we could have been Magnaflorious in another time and place.
Two different people.
With two other people.
Emphasis on two different people.
Yes. I like that, by the way, that she's like, I've been complimenting people so much and so reflexively that I started making up words. And so I started calling people Magnaflorious. And I'm like, I think is a real word. No, I could be wrong.
No, I don't think it's a real word. I also like her getting some aspirin out of the cabinet and then saying, "Good job, cabinet."
Good job, cabinet. She's
I gotta stop doing that. That's fine.
I've never been told to compliment people more. That's disgusting. I'm good. Yeah. Do we have any other stray notes on this episode, folks?
Oh, I like the whole thing about how Linda's known to the bosses as the suggestion box lady. And other people write suggestion box suggestions that she should stop hogging the box and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good piece of character development for Linda that helps to make her character more of her own. Because I think we, in the first few episodes, get so much Linda development that's about her and someone else, Mm-hmm. And this is the first plot that's really hers all to herself. So
she's rebellious. Cool. She's I was gonna start doing the Megan Thee Stallion song. She's a savage. No, she's rebellious. She has suggestions and she has opinions, which I think is great. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I thought was really funny was when Ted tries to introduce himself to Manny, and he's like, "I can't believe this is the first time we've met," and he's like, "It's not. We've worked on 3 projects together before."
It's my favorite line in Clone High when he's like, Cleo, don't you remember me? I gave you a kidney. She's like, what? And then it cut inside to his kidney, and you see the missing kidney, and it's like, I miss him.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good episode overall.
Indeed. I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was entertaining, and the satire is still very good. But for now, that's what we got. Six, thank you for guesting.
Thank you for having
this first
me.
Half.
Yeah.
Would you like to plug anything or give us a chat sum?
Sure. As far as a chat sum, you should watch Kamen Rider X-Aid. What if doctors were curing a disease you got from video games by turning into superheroes? It's great. It's really good.
You've been banging the Kamen Rider drum for what feels like years now.
But I've always got a new show for you.
Yes. But I'm glad you're still on that train. I'll check out X-Aid for sure. That seems like one of the ones in the list.
I looked at some of the Kamen Rider toys on eBay, And then eBay emailed me and was like, hey, you should really buy this one. There's one left. And the specific one they picked was the one that was like a dating sim like power up. Yeah. I was like, fuck. All right, I guess you got me. I literally run a visual novel podcast. You win.
You ended up buying it?
Yeah.
You're a legend. You're an icon and a legend.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it looked expensive if I saw this.
But yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and plug your other stuff.
And then just if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Sixdettmar, SAXDETTMAR, and my work's on scanlinemedia.com or patreon.com/scanlinemedia. I do a lot of podcasts.
Love it. I'm on some of those too. Meow. John's been on some of those, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah.
That's true. Cool. Well, thanks again. And John and I are going to take a break, and then we're going to read some emails. And after that, we'll be right back to discuss You Are the Boss.
Aren't they like T-mails? Because of Ted?
Oh, Ted mail.
Oh, God. I have to write a bumper now.
Ted mail. Ted mail.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the email segment where we read the emails, comments, and feedback that you send to us. You can send emails yourself by heading over to chatspot@gmail.com, and we'll field your question and read it on the podcast. We have 2 emails this week, which is a big one for us. Wow! We got a brief one from our friend Nick, who is a regular contributor to the show. He says, great episodes. This is regarding episodes 2 and 3 of Better Off Chatz. I do think that we need some script reads of fan fiction between Linda and Veronica, unless future episodes already give us that. Yeah, I was listening back to some Scape chats recently, and the script reads are so fun. We put music under them and did the voices and everything. It's very fun. And then remember we did a whole Crusade reading on the Patreon.
Yeah, we've never done fan fiction though, which could be
a
whole can of worms. I mean, listen, if people are interested and want us to do a series of fan fiction readings on the Patreon or something, I mean,
we'll freaking do that.
I would do it
in a heartbeat.
I would do it.
There is a good amount of Better Off Ted fanfiction. I didn't see any Linda Veronica stuff at a quick glance, but I'll dig. I'll do the digging, damn it. And if not, I might write some. Oops. I'm very excited to present this second email, Magellan.
Yeah, me too.
We received an email from a friend of the podcast, longtime pal, who is getting back to sending us her memos here and there. And this one is very wonderful. It is in regards to Better Off Chatz episode 3. Magellan, do you want to read this one?
Okay, so Omen says, hi friends. Finals are over, the Google Doc is open, let's go. I really enjoy what I've seen of Better Off Ted so far. It's wonderfully watchable and not cringe. That's great. I like my comedy zany and my actors middling, and this is that. Checks all the boxes. First off, I say I love this all the time. Have gratitude in the moment, my friends. It will change your life. That was a comment to how we started the episode last time.
By being like, why do people actually say I love this? Which I think is, I'm joking, but I would love people to say that more. It's great.
I love this.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Oh.
First, Omen's thoughts on season 1, episode 5. This is the medical malpractice episode. As a disabled adult, both plots made me vehemently angry. Those words are capitalized. Because the writing says nothing to condemn either Ted's competitiveness or Lemonfield's blatant malpractice and suable ethics issues. You're right that the satirical aspect got very muddled, so I'm going to focus on that for a little bit. The show gets right that often the disabled kid is the one kid who's off limits for physical violence, but kids are very in tune with movement, other kids, and the world around them, and are able to pick up even very slight differences as frightening. All other types of violence are fair game, and I could shock Alan at least with the threats I receive from children younger than Rose every day. Children aren't evil, we just don't discuss disability with them, ever. So they often jump to very violent conclusions about how you got your disability and then respond in kind. The amount of times a rumor went around that I'd been shot or beaten up again because I was out of school for a medical procedure are unreal. Honestly, more important than teaching children to treat people equally or let the disabled kid win is teaching them this. When it comes to kids who look or seem different at school, they may feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort is their problem that we are going to work on together. not the fault of the disabled student for being disabled, or weird, or making people uncomfortable, or being too much work to accommodate. People will make fun of the different kid and exclude them, and that's their problem. They're acting like an asshole and disrupting the learning environment. Everyone matters just by existing. Everyone deserves kindness and friendship, and everyone deserves their education. Society isn't accessible to disabled people because people thought we didn't have the right to exist in public. We do. Additionally, people may need different things to succeed. Just because the kid next to you has a different teacher to help them or tools on their desk that look different to yours doesn't mean you can't be friends or in the same group project. It's not going to fix bullying forever, but anything to take the edge off. Also, the way the general is portrayed as an icky gay don't ask, don't tell repeal is fucking exhausting. I have no other opinions, he's just tiring. This joke is so dated. I thought you were better than this sitcom from 11 years ago, canceled after 2 seasons at the height of the Great Recession. I shouldn't be disappointed, but I am. Linda, however, is absolutely delightful. I see her as an emotional chameleon both in terms of personality and in terms of her role on the show. She doesn't seem to have a very stable sense of self, but there are always a few things in common, and I like that in a comedy you always need that character who's kind of surprising and able to roll with the punches and handle a lot of situations, and Linda's that character here. It's also fitting that she's dissatisfied with her life and trying to figure out who she is. She's trying on a different hat every day, seeing what feels good. It feels organic.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of really great stuff. I mean, I think Omen's expressed really well and in a lot more detail and nuance what we were sort of trying to get at last week, just in terms of what felt wrong about the approach of that episode to the disabled character that's talked about at Rose's school. So I appreciate that insight. And then agreed with the general stuff. And then that's a good way to think about the Linda stuff, that reframes sort of my frustration with how they're handling Linda to be, maybe it's a positive instead of a knock against the show.
Right, like she's flexible because she's trying to figure out what her personality is. She's not just like being written that way. I think that's a very good read. Yeah, no comments. I mean, I think that all the stuff about the plot and the disability discussion is on point, and I think that her email speaks for itself there. But it is really frustrating the way that kids are not taught properly to like discuss disability or understand it really well. I'm sure we've all been extremely ableist at some point in our lives in various different ways. But it's important to listen to different people's opinions and understand and teach kids at the right age that this stuff is really bad and really harmful. So thank you for that, Omens. She also sent a comment about episode 6, so a little bit briefer here, saying, I really enjoyed this episode. It was entertaining, but bureaucratic hell doesn't amuse me. I also think I may have fallen asleep partway through. That's very fair and valid. Edward Margaret Crisp did get a laugh, though, because Portia de Rossi is very precise with her timing, and I appreciate that Dr. Bomba is lovely, and I hope we get to see more of him. Otherwise, you hit all the points I was going to make, and the above post got very long. I started brunch a little while ago, and I need to grab 2 cheddar wursts from the dining hall, because this is the upper Midwest, and we do sausages and sauerkraut starting at 10 a.m. Love to you both amidst the madness, and I hope to hear from you soon. Warmest regards, Omens. Yeah, I was like filled with joy when we got this email. I was like, yes, it's the Omens memos are back, baby.
We miss hearing from you.
Yeah, I know you're very busy with everything and school and whatnot, but we really appreciate your feedback.
That when we started Scape Chats, like we were in college, and now Omens is in college. And anyway, but I guess
I know.
Lines, right?
Yeah, technically yes, but it still feels weird.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah. So again, folks, if you would like to get your email read on the show, just go ahead and send it to chatspot@gmail.com. We also read tweets if we get like a long or a really good tweet. So don't feel like you can't send stuff over there and not get it read. But thank you both to Nick and Omens for sending emails. And we'll be right back after a brief message from Viridian Dynamics to discuss You Are the Boss of Me.
Viridian Dynamics. Bosses. Everybody has one. Without bosses, we'd be like these worms. Disgusting. Bosses make everything better. So listen to your boss. And don't question them. Otherwise, you're no better than a worm. Viridian Dynamics. Bosses. Necessary.
Welcome back to Better Off Chatz. Hi, Alan, you're still here.
Somehow I'm still here, but despite it all, it's still me. Baby.
What's that song? Despite it all.
You're a Wonderwall?
Yeah, that's right. And we've got a real Wonderwall with us. I mean, I don't know if you want to tell the folks who's here.
I do, if you'll allow me.
I'll allow you, because you're my Wonderwall.
Oh my God, thank you. For this episode, folks, we are now joined by a friend who will hopefully bring a lot of street cred to this conversation. It's best friend of the podcast, Jim.
Hi, folks.
Wow. Jim, is this your first official main Chatz feed appearance?
I think it is.
Introduce the kids to you. Jim's one of our best friends. He's sort of the third person in our Chatz pizza pie. We've all been friends for very long, and we love Jim very much.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Jim, what's
Thank
a fun
you.
fact about you? We'll do this like a really boring
man.
work icebreaker. Yeah, what's a fun fact about you?
A fun fact about myself is I enjoy my cereal with the milk in first, and then I put in the dry cereal.
No,
and
you
then
don't. Do you do that?
You don't.
I don't.
Okay.
No, I was trying to think of a fun fact that I would share at a work-related function, and then
I don't know if I've ever talked about this on Chats, but I had a big debate in a homeroom class of mine like 2 years ago about whether kids put the cereal or the milk in first. And there was one student who was insistent that she puts the milk in first. And she was like, well, you got to heat the milk. And everyone was like, what? You're doing what? You're heating the milk? But that's what she did. She had hot milk and then put cereal in it. So
You ever have a hot grape? You have to. You told me that story at least to me. I don't know if it's been on a podcast, but
I
it's a
don't know
classic.
if it's been on a podcast either.
Hot grape though, good food. That's good eating.
Hot grape? What do? You put it in the microwave?
No, don't. If you're at home,
That
don't
would
put a grape in the
explode.
microwave. It's
Wouldn't
full of
it
water.
explode?
Yes. No, a hot grape is they dip grapes in like caramel, like heated caramel, and it's not caramel. It's like just sugar, like it's clear sugar.
Okay.
And you bite into it. It's got like a little crunch on the outside, and then it's a grape, but the crunch part is warm. I had this at a street fair last summer, and there's a really great video of one of my friends going, "It's an interesting flavor, hot grape," and then he goes, "Hot grape."
You could probably post that and become a meme.
Yeah, hot grape. It's a very classic grape. I don't even know how we got here. What's going on? Well, we're talking about like work stuff and like what's our fun fact about Jim. But yeah.
Jim, what did you say? What you do? Do we know what you do yet?
Yeah, so I feel like this is going to be relevant for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I am a PhD candidate in a physics program, which makes me a scientist, a LEM, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I guess I will. Do you identify more as a Phil or a Lem, Jim? And this is in fact an entrapment question, but go ahead.
I identify more as a probably as a Lem.
Okay.
Like I think we all have moments where we're Phils in our own lives.
Yep.
And I think that would also be like a really good introduction to my self-help tape. Like we all have moments where we're Phils in our life, but sometimes you just gotta strive for Lem. So
Lem is who we wish we were, and Phil is who we often are.
yeah.
Anyways, yes, you're a physics PhD student, candidate rather, and you've worked in many places before. This episode, which is called "You Are the Boss of Me," is about bosses. To introduce him, Magellan, can you go ahead and give me some episode credits?
Sure thing. I would love to. So this episode, You Are the Boss of Me, was written by Dan O'Shannon, who's written for Modern Family, Cheers, Frasier, and of course, most important of all of those, Back to You. Great show. And directed by Paul Lazarus, who's directed on shows like, or is this a movie? What is this?
I believe Slingshot's a show. I forget.
I don't know. Our notes here say directed Slingshot, Dream On, and 7 Girlfriends. None of that means anything to me. This episode originally aired on June 23rd, 2009. And Alan, what happened in You Are the Boss of Me?
Well, Magellan, I'm glad you asked. In this episode, Phil and Lem invite Ted to Medieval Fight Club while his daughter's away with his ex-wife, but they come to regret their decision. Also, Linda comes to regret becoming Veronica's friend. In a way, this episode's about regrets. It's also about bosses, which go in hand.
Yeah. So, Jim, you requested to be on for this episode. You've seen Better Off Ted before, right?
Yes, I am a Ted head.
Is that what the fandom calls themselves?
I've been petitioning for the fandom to call themselves.
You follow the show on tour from city to city, and
taking a lot of drugs. Yeah.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. So my kind of to contextualize my experience, I wound up watching Better Off Ted when I was in I think high school. I think it was just after the show went off the air. And then I've been listening along with the pod, and yeah, I just remember how much I really enjoy this show.
What do you like about it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit weird, because I think that the show relies on some stereotypes about scientists. But it does so in a way that's like very humanizing and I think funny.
Yeah.
So this show kind of I think compares and contrasts really interestingly with The Big Bang Theory, because they're both.
Sure. Whoa.
And you love that show, right? You're a big fan.
Oh man! Love that Sheldon. Oh, Bagoinga.
Sheldon.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, because these shows were out at roughly the same time. I mean, yes. Big Bang Theory obviously lasted a lot longer than Better Off Ted, but
when did Big Bang premiere? A couple years earlier, maybe? Big Bang Theory. I'm looking it up. Keep talking.
I think it might have been.
I'll figure it out.
I'm gonna say 2007. I think I'm wrong about this, but if I am right,
you're right.
It's gonna look huge.
Congrats.
There we go.
So that's an interesting part of the context of the show that we haven't considered. Is it lives in a post Big Bang world, and it's like we're gonna do science.
Nerds are fun again.
Yeah. But anyway, go on, Jim.
But I think I think the thing that I really like about this is. Even though Phil is kind of shown as a bit of a pathetic character most of the time, the show is overall just kind of a positive show. Everyone's kind of treated to their moment of being cool or doing something brave. And I just get the warm fuzzies from this show. I think it's, yeah.
It's very comforting to watch sometimes.
I also think it's genuinely pretty funny.
Yes, definitely.
And there's a lot of bold writing, and and it's also a really interesting critique on capitalism in America, and specifically the roles of mega corporations, which is also just a really interesting niche to kind of dive into for a mainstream television program.
Yeah, I can't think of another TV show that has done that I've seen. At least I've heard that there's that show Corporate on whatever Comedy Central or something maybe, but like, and obviously there's like The Office or like shows that are about workplaces, but not necessarily shows that are about like big mega corporations.
But The Office doesn't feel anywhere near as critical of its environment than that this show
right
does.
That too.
Well, I think one of the other things is if you look at when the show came out, 2009 and 2010 were seasons 1 and 2, right? And that's immediately following the financial crisis.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you wind up seeing a lot of I think distrust of big corporations and faceless aggregations of money. Yeah, which is like also kind of a cool place in history for this show to exist.
But I liked, that this episode was very much about bosses, the problem with being friends with your boss, thinking that you can, and trying to form a relationship with your manager and the problems inherent in that. I know we want to talk about Medieval Fight Club right away, but I think we can kind of get through the Linda and Veronica plotline a little bit quicker. So I'd like to start with that. Veronica reveals very early on to Linda that her driver, at the end of this meeting where they're like, hey, thanks for staying late, and they're talking about brain surgery that makes everything that you eat taste sweet. I love all of the research and development that gets done on the show. And she's like, oh, my driver died recently. We find out that it's her grandmother who didn't want handouts, so she chose to work as Veronica's driver, which is a little implausible, but not that implausible that your grandmother would be like, yeah, you can call me your driver, like whatever. I think that's fine. Like I like driving you around places. That's not too bad. So she ends up Linda offers to drive her around, and she keeps trying to be like, so how much would that rate be for you? And she's like, no, I'm just being a person to you, Veronica. I'm just trying to like be kind to you. And so they go out and they do go on some errands. They drink a bunch of wine, and bing bang boom, it turns out that Veronica is revealing some secrets to Linda when she's really drunk. She's the kind of drunk who doesn't like show her drunkenness during the period of drinking, but then instantly passes out after a certain point, which is very funny. And then she is in her bed, and Linda like tucks her in, and right before she leaves, she whispers to Linda that, if I understood it correctly, her grandfather dated Eleanor Roosevelt,
or at least had an affair with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah, had an affair with Eleanor Roosevelt, who hated men but loved onions, and which same. At first you're like, that's just kind of a funny gag, but it's probably true. And so Linda's worried, like, oh my God, Veronica, like, no, just told me a secret about her life. I don't ever find this very common where someone is drunk and then they use that as an opportunity to have them be open. I see that in TV a good amount, but I've never had that happen in real life where someone says something that they wouldn't have otherwise said.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the use of like alcohol as a way of getting secrets out of people has always been weird. Like,
it's pretty rote. Yeah.
But because of that, she's now like revealing all this stuff, and also like Linda's getting something out of it because like technically being friends with your boss can have some benefits. She lets Linda skip out on certain projects so they can go out. She helps do Linda's hair. It's weird that this is like Veronica doesn't know how to be friends with people unless it's in a manipulative, like dark way like this, which I think is kind of funny. And so Linda's like super nervous about this. The part where this got so dark that I had to like pause was when she blurts out a secret during one of the meetings, which is that she says, I used to feed my sister in her sleep so she wouldn't be skinnier than me. I was like, oh no, the horror movie plotline is here. I don't like this.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to make of this plot because there's a lot of it that I found pretty funny, like when Veronica is passed out on her bed, and then you get that close up of Linda, like, you want one of these? Like she's gonna punch Veronica or something. Like
it's so harmless. She's like, you're gonna slug, yeah.
Yeah, and like that stuff, I thought that was pretty funny. But then just the joke of like these horrible things Veronica has done ended up making me more upset than like making me laugh. So I ended up not loving this particular plot. I think my second time watching it, I liked it more, but the first time I was like, oh, this is just making me sad.
It's super dark. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, sorry. So for me, I thought that this was a very funny B plot because I think that Veronica is kind of the embodiment of corporate culture, right?
True.
Yeah.
And so like there's always this idea that there's some hidden cost to doing a transaction with her, right? She's always like kind of looking for something. And so like this is kind of like seeing all of the company's dirty secrets like written down on their books, like all of the fucking gross stuff that they do, right? Just like brought to light. And I thought that it was very funny if you consider that Veronica's like a stand-in for the company and, Linda's kind of the every person.
Yes.
Yeah. I do appreciate, at least on a sort of abstract level, also that the episode is playing on your expectation that, oh, Veronica on the inside is like a good person. She just, has like been hardened by her job or whatever. And so when she first divulges something, you think, oh, okay, it's pretty bad. She got her grandpa deported, but also he cheated on her grandmother. So like maybe that's redeemable. But then every step of the way, it just gets more and more certain that Veronica is an awful person. Where you might have expected at the beginning of the episode that Linda's going to discover that, underneath it all, she's actually okay. So that, at least tonally, I think is good for the show. And I like what you're saying, Jim. But then just the literal details, I was like, "Bleh."
Real life.
There's also something which is pretty, just going off what you said. It's kind of interesting that like this episode kind of solidifies the fact that Veronica isn't an awful person because she's not like an awful person because she's good at her job. She's good at her job because she's an awful person.
Right.
And so, yeah, she's kind of like built for this corporate culture.
Yeah.
It's
like,
also very, sorry. Yes.
No, just like how Ted is good at his job because he says yes to everything. Same idea.
Yeah.
Like it's your bad quality that makes you a good employee.
There's also something that I found kind of interesting in retrospect about this episode, and it's the fact that this is about boss-employee friendships, right?
Yeah.
And specifically, the thing that I find interesting is what they left out, which is Veronica and not Veronica and Ted. Well, actually, Veronica and Ted's relationship, or Ted and Linda's relationship.
Yeah, of like a romantic relationship with your boss, you're saying.
But also, Linda and Ted are friends, right?
True.
They're friends first.
Yeah, you can have a positive boss-employee relationship depending on the dynamic.
Right, but it's just interesting that they were exploring kind of like friendships that had no romantic connection, I guess.
Yeah, because it might get kind of muddled if you get into the romance. Like that kind of can become its own. I'm sure they're gonna do a plot that's like about like love is gonna be the Viridian Dynamics thing at some point.
Right,
I'd imagine.
But John, you made a good point earlier that I briefly wanted to touch on, which is that if this was another show, like if this was a Scrubs or a more earnest show, like I always am in favor of very earnest, very positive like media because I think we need a lot of that. But this is not the kind of show where the secret that Veronica is going to divulge is like, oh, I always actually loved my grandmother, and I wish that she didn't want to work for me because I wanted her to I wanted to have a family relationship with her. It's like no, she is also her cleaner. In fact, we're going to lean further into the joke because that's way funnier, and we're not trying to sympathize with the boss, which something like The Office definitely does. So I think the comparison there is very valid.
Yeah, I mean, if this was like a Scrubs or like something like that, it's like Dr. Cox is so standoffish and severe, but then underneath it all, he's sad and lovable, and that's just not how this show rolls.
Yeah, the boss-employee relationship here never resolves itself. I mean, this episode ends kind of sad for all the plot lines somewhat. Veronica, once Linda like puts her foot down and says like, I don't want you to like confide in me this stuff anymore, I can't take it. Veronica immediately starts snubbing her and like taking away job opportunities because it's all about power. And I can even use a little bit of my like business school learning in here to talk about like the way that you get your employees to like you is not by complimenting them like last episode. And it's not by trying to be friends with them, but by like treating them like they are people and just being a little bit empathetic to them and motivating them in ways that are helpful and not manipulative. But Veronica is like, no, I'm actually going to give half of your cubicle to another guy because you said you don't like me and now fuck you. Like just the arrogance and the sort of like cruelty that comes from her is what keeps their tension stable throughout this episode.
And also the guy that she gives that cubicle space to is Joe, who we learned earlier Veronica hates, but I guess she hates Linda more now.
Right. And at the end of the day, you're always going to have boss employee like power dynamics because some people just like power. Some people like competition and like being the best at something, and that causes that tension. I want to also talk about Medieval Fight Club now because that's like the showcase of the episode. It's the new set piece. I always love it when the show brings out a new set. But basically we find out that, Ted is trying to be better friends with Phil and Lem to improve relationships between the boss and the employee. but he's like, let's go out drinking, and they're like, we can't. We have something going on tonight, and they invite him to it, and it turns out that in the basement of Viridian Dynamics, they're part of a group of employees who basically do a form of LARPing that they call Medieval Fight Club, where they all dress like different medieval characters, and they have ranks, and you can battle with swords, with wooden swords in the arena for the right to increase your rank. They created a class system. Outside of work, they made their own class system. This is awesome. I loved this set. I loved watching all this stuff happen. I thought this was really funny. What did we think about? Because we're all somewhat we're nerds here. We like medieval stuff. We've been to the Ren Fair, and now we get to see people using their off time at work to go downstairs and beat the crap out of each other. It's like nerd Fight Club almost.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of am like a nerd in the sense where I see something like this and I'm like, oh, the rules of their world just aren't quite clear enough. Like, how can you get defeated in one
what does the king even
fight
do?
and go all the way down to jester? That doesn't make sense. Like, why is squire the highest rank he can get to? It's like, what are the rules of this? I don't know. So, but I did think it was pretty cute. I thought the costumes were fun.
Oh, translator micros.
Yeah, yes. I was being pedantic. But I did think that it was cute, and it was fun to see Phil and Lem in a space where like they kind of knew the ropes and were higher status than Ted, at least at first, and then to see him sort of like rise in the ranks and screw it all up. I don't know. It was a fun visual way to express what was textually going on with like the themes of the episode.
Yeah.
I really like I don't know. I think Phil and Lem are my favorite characters in Better Off Ted because I think they form a lot of the like emotional basis for like I don't know. Like I personally think that they provide the most cuteness, maybe. It's just fun to watch them work in the space, and I think that if you take away Phil and Lem, like you don't
There's no
really
heart.
Heart. Right, yes, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So I think that to me is cool, and it's cool to as Magellan is saying to see them in this context where it's not necessarily a social context, but they're doing better than Ted.
I have so many things to say here. One, I think that this is a great example of like extracurricular activity that's good for employees, like lower level employees, to bond with each other and to form their own like relationships and dynamics and stuff, like Viridian Dynamics and stuff. Of course, introducing a boss into this messes everything up because I think it's Lem at the end of the episode who says something like, bosses and employees just shouldn't hang out. It's like a ventriloquist trying to be friends with his dummy. At the end of the day, you know who's sleeping in the suitcase. It feels like the he like answers the question.
I mean, do we
Ted,
feel that that's true of our experience? It's like, I think that Lem, very, very confidently lays out this theme that the episode then backs up, which is like, if you try to be friends with your boss, there's going to be trouble. Do we feel that that's true, like in our own personal experiences?
I definitely do. I think that you have to set that boundary. You can either not set that boundary and say we're equals, which I would prefer, or as soon as you say I'm your supervisor, I'm your boss, I'm not going to try to be friends with you, and I don't want to hang out with you outside of work. I think that's very valid, and that's not even like a controversial take. I think that's down the line.
What about you, Jim?
So for my part, right now I'm in academia, which is kind of markedly different than traditional work. Right. So to some extent, there are a lot of opportunities to kind of bond with your boss that don't normally exist. So for instance, there's a lot of group activities that we do because we're a relatively small team. We're like 8 to 10 people. And so, we might go out and pick apples from an orchard, and the boss is there, you're there, but like it's not necessarily a weird thing because it's such a small, like non-hierarchical group. Or super hierarchical because, they're the ones who decide if you get to graduate or not. So,
right. Yeah, I've definitely had kind of weirdness around being good friends with someone who was like my coach or like my kind of direct supervisor isn't really the word, because in schools it's like kind of there's this person who you report to for this and that person who you report to for this, and it's like kind of all over the place. But it definitely does muddle things when you're like buddies with someone and then they're like, by the way, you got to do this thing, or like people in those positions feel tentative about setting those expectations. It does make things kind of confusing at times. And I think it also something that I'm realizing about the episode now that is a parallel I didn't notice is that you can kind of say something similar about parents and children, because like ultimately Ted's problem with, and we can talk about this in more depth in a bit, but his problem with his ex-wife and how she's treating Rose is that she's basically just trying to be Rose's best friend. And he's sort of like, well, you have to be her parent, and like that's a different thing. And in a way, not to say that bosses are our daddies or whatever, but like, you can't be friends with your parent, right? Because like there is your parent has to, like, I don't know, be in charge of you in a certain way when you're a kid, and like you have to look to them for advice. And when the relationship feels more like your buddies, you kind of lose the parent part of it.
Well, we are going to come back to all this stuff, but the other point I had about this medieval fight club is I was talking about extracurriculars that you do with your like same level of coworker employees, because it helps you bond, it helps you like each other, it gives you something, a vent for all your frustrations or whatever. And in our current climate, we sometimes want to talk about Better Off Ted as a contrast with the way that the world is right now because of the pandemic. It's way more difficult and way less likely to like find these bonding opportunities because, I know people who've like been in fencing clubs with their coworkers, or will like play a weekly basketball game, or play D&D together, or go to see movies together. Like, little things like that you can kind of use to bond. And it's so much harder now because people who even are still going to offices, like essential employees, just go home. Like the concept of hanging out after work doesn't exist right now. And it's like pretty frustrating and sad. But like, I just realized recently that there is a really nice bar, like less like across the street from my office. And I had this moment where I was like, damn, since I started here, by the time I had good enough relationships to ask someone to go there, the pandemic started. And so I'm probably never going to go to that bar and like hang out with people. But, that's just something I keep thinking about, where I'm like, you couldn't do Medieval Fight Club right now. It bums me out to think about it. But hopefully we can get back to that. And people can do, the accursed virtual happy hour, which I've been a part of before.
No, thanks.
No. It's the most we did 2 of them, and they were both dreadful, honestly. And then someone was like, "Well, you guys gonna do a third one? I'm sorry I missed those." And everyone was like, "No,
no thanks.
We hated it. It's bad for every reason."
There was a really interesting. I'm allowed to reference other podcasts on this, right?
No, they don't.
Maybe,
exist.
maybe.
No, okay. Wait, what if it's NPR?
Okay, all right.
Okay.
We're not,
Hourglass
we're not in
Beyond
direct competition with NPR. That's good.
It was a Planet Money podcast where they talked about kind of these virtual happy hours, right? And they said like, or essentially the takeaway was that like virtual happy hours don't work, or at least not in quite the same way, because like, you need to have some spontaneity, but like actually that spontaneity, just like going out to a bar with some friends or whatever, or, a coffee shop, that allows you to like kind of come up with new ideas, because it's the stress-free environment where you can kind of just like, talk to each other, like kind of brainstorm, and then you can come up with like really good ideas. And so like essentially they were saying that with the pandemic, virtual happy hours are not a substitute because everyone's talking over each other. There's no spontaneity. It's not relaxed. So like everything kind of, sucks when it comes to a virtual happy hour.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like I've had a lot of great kind of academic conversations about teaching at a virtual happy hour where it's like, not a virtual happy hour, sorry, like a real spontaneous happy hour where
what are those?
where it's like you'd expect that what people would talk about is anything but work, but really sometimes the conversation returns to the aspects of your work that you actually like and enjoy talking about. And yeah, you can like, I don't know, like you were saying, find creative or inventive new ideas.
Yeah.
The space to just sort of relax and riff.
We had a total of 2 dinners at the pharmacy where we like met outside of work and got dinner together. And in one of them, there was like a good amount of drinking. And by the end, they were like talking about pharmacy stuff while drunk, which was a delight. They're like, why does insurance work this way? And it was like they were coming up with really cool ideas, but all of it was forgotten the next day. But it was like, oh, that is my boss. That's definitely my boss who's like downing his third, whatever. But yeah, I agree that it can produce good results. It doesn't. I encourage it. But it's super hard right now because of the way things are. I would do a medieval fight club. Screw it. It seems kind of fun. I like that there's like a tiering like of the different positions, and then like different people are better at it or whatever. I like that.
I would want to be the jester, even though Phil in this episode, when they're like, you're going to be the jester, he's like, all right, fine, but it's the same jokes you heard last month. I would enjoy being the jester and coming up with new jokes.
I did fencing in college, but and you guys know that. The people on the podcast, not the people listening necessarily.
Maybe a couple people if you get some friends to listen. I mean,
yeah. Ooh, always. Yeah,
become patrons. Just like it's an idea.
So I did fencing, but what you guys might not know is that on the first day of the activities fair, there was a LARPing class that I attended. So, do you guys have any questions on LARPing?
Yeah, what are the rules? What'd you do?
So I think the rules depend from LARP club to LARP club, but for this one it was there were like some foam swords essentially with like some sort of like a PVC tube on the inside, and then you had different weapon types. You could build your own weapons, and then it was if you got hit in the leg, you had to hop around. Yeah. If you got hit in the arm, you couldn't use that arm anymore, and if you get hit in the chest or head, you die. Or anything? There were no fireballs. No, this was a very serious LARPing club. So, I mean, nobody knew any magic. But there was someone who came up with they invented a glaive, which is kind of like it's like a sword on the end of a stick. Yeah. And so that was a thing. Yikes. So
wow, that's
anyways.
Serious.
I just remember that I had an activity fair at my college, and the only one that looked appealing to me, I'm sorry, 2012 Alan, I am here to roast you right now, was the Gamer Club. And it was the most miserable club of nerds I've ever been. I'm sorry to the Gamer Club.
You liked being in the Gamer Club, didn't you?
No. The Gamer Club was like a bunch of guys who were like, so are we playing League tonight or are we playing Smash? And I was like, neither. I want to go home. And they're like, we have pizza. And I'm like, I will stay. That was the Gamer. I went to 3 meetings and then I got the heck out of Dodge.
But you liked the space. Wasn't there a space that you enjoyed that had gaming?
No. Sorry. What you're thinking of is like in senior year. This is a good example of what like Phil and Lem do. Is like between classes, I would go to the student lounge, and this is just in that last year. There was like a bunch of guys that would play Uno or they would play games. Like those guys were great because that wasn't a club. That wasn't, and they were like nerds like me, where they liked a bunch of different stuff. Whereas the Gamer Club, like whatever it was called, was more about like, hey, we want to form a clan for our League of Legends team.
I got you. It going back to the LARPing rules thing, it did seem really strange to me that they had what seemed to be actually sharp swords that they were using.
Yeah, that was oof.
The fact that like the kind of thing that gets Ted kicked out is that he charges at the guy with a real sword. It's like, what one? why would those swords be allowed? But also, two, that moment didn't feel, if we accept that they allow swords, that moment didn't feel like out of the ordinary for that particular club's rules. So it was weird to me that the Groth guy was like, wait, what the fuck? He's using a real sword? I don't know. Did you guys feel the same way? That moment felt kind of odd to me.
Yeah, it felt very. I mean, I think it would be weird if they had foam swords to some extent.
Yeah,
because
it would look stupid
and
on TV if they had foam swords. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I also agree that it feels weird that it was just that the guy was so freaked out by Ted just kind of running at him.
Yeah.
That felt a little much. I agree with that.
It just felt like a cop out.
I thought the idea was that it was surprising because they thought he would bounce out, but instead he went in and fought. I thought that was what the point there was.
Like you're saying that Groth just thought that he would be too scared to fight him in the first place?
Yes.
I guess that makes sense. But like I guess as an audience, we know Ted and we know that he wouldn't look at that guy and be like, oh no, this is going to be bad. So it just felt kind of arbitrary to me.
I also just love the secret identities that people like during their day job. The Groth.
Yeah.
I just want to call him the Groff, like the guy who's in Hamilton, but no, Groff is just like a cleaner. He's just like one of the guys who like sweeps or whatever. And then he's like, no, I don't do that stuff anymore. He goes, I got a girlfriend.
That's funny.
Mean, very mean. There was a lot of women in that club. It's not even like they don't even paint it to be a boys' club. It's a very mixed gender place. But
I will say they did kind of put a status on. Like I think the entire club was essentially a means of inverting status, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like people who normally have like low social status, like the head of IT, who like you're supposed to.
The king is the head of IT.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of like a reversal of roles, and so I feel like that's kind of where a lot of the conflict comes from, right? It's the fact that Ted is going in and he's taking this reversal of roles, and then he's kind of correcting it to it's kind of like normal hierarchy.
Quo, yeah.
But it was kind of a little bit weird that they didn't find anyone who was just like, oh yeah, that's Greg. He's he works in product testing, like just kind of a normal dude. Greg.
Yeah, that's funny.
Everyone was kind of like a little bit of a geek. Yeah.
What's the deal with Ted hating his wife, guys? I thought this was so weird. Also, amongst all of the different like conflict that's going on, we have Ted. The reason that he's hanging out with Phil and Lem is because Rose is with his ex-wife, and she's like giving Rose ice cream for breakfast and being too nice to her, and he has that conflict. But he suddenly like very vehemently dislikes his wife, and it feels out of character.
Well, no, it's been like that the whole time. I mean, the first episode, he's like, Rose's mom went off to save the world or whatever. Like, he's always been dismissive of her from the beginning. But in this episode, because she's like in proximity, it's even more intense to the point where he openly calls her the B word. And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
This isn't like, I'm not on Ted's side right now. I get that she's being awful, but he's like, that B. It is funny that Phil and Lem are both like, hey, that's your daughter.
She's 7.
but still, that's intense, Ted. His anger. I think because we never see her, it really doesn't feel fair to me. I don't know. And it just seems really kind of sexist I think, at a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that language is deplorable. But I think that so my interpretation is that Ted just feels completely abandoned, and like I think that's where his hate comes from, because like I mean, this is obviously extrapolating, but before her mom ran off, like I think he was like very much invested in their relationship. And then when his wife like suddenly runs off and like leaves him, like I think he just feels kind of like helpless and abandoned. And I think that can really generate some some huge feelings of hatred and animosity. Still not okay to say, but especially in a workplace, that's like so
right.
Yeah, that's so messed up.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I'm coming from is I understand like why he's upset, but I think they just play it for comedy so much that it's like, what is this? I'm supposed to laugh at him being like, my ex-wife, oh boy, let me tell you guys. And also at the same time, Phil is like, my wife is so mean to me. Like, multiple characters have this woman that they're talking about as like the most awful person in the world to them. And we just don't really have any sort of balance to that or see those female characters ever, and it just rubs me the wrong way. But I think it's a valid conflict for him to have with Stacy, that like she's spoiling Rose and that bothers him. So at least that part of it I think fits with the themes of the episode and makes sense. And you know, if you're telling a story about a single dad, that's a perfectly good plot to have.
The line in there that got to me was when it felt like he was in couples therapy for a sec, and he's like, oh man, she's gonna go off and try to save the world instead of taking care of herself and her own problems. I'm like, oh my god, like I didn't need to know this, Ted. Holy crap.
Yeah.
He gets so specific about her issues that I'm like, oh, this is based in some maybe a writer's reality or something, but the joke definitely works there. Yeah. He also says, you know, she lets her have ice cream for breakfast. You know what I let her do? Get vaccinated. Whoa, 2009. Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about vaccines again. You would hope that the anti-vaccination discussion ended, but A, it hasn't, and B, take a decent sample size of people in your community and ask them if they would take the COVID-19 vaccine, and you'd be surprised how many people would say that they don't plan to take it. Anyways, before we get sad, let's pivot. Jim.
I really like Ted's relationship with Rose in general.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
And I feel like this was a really interesting episode because it was exploring Ted's relationship with Rose to the absence of Ted's relationship with Rose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I thought...
Her not being there is where how you learn about her.
Yeah, and he gets aggressive and he's angry and he's obviously like misplacing all of his feelings and emotions, and like that's the male way of doing things in 2009, which is it's interesting to kind of reflect on what television thought, you know, masculinity was in 2009.
Yeah.
Speaking of parents' relationships, I loved, by the way, after in that same scene when Ted's like, oh, speaking of bosses helping their employees with stuff, he tells the AA meeting to meet in a utility closet so that the medieval fight club can meet again.
We see some pretty bad, like, I think I've talked about this before, but there is like a dark side to Ted that is just, it is not good. It doesn't look good. The fact that he effortlessly moves that AA meeting, the fact that when Phil and Lem are like, we don't think we're going to go, he says, okay, well then just do all this work for me by tomorrow morning. It's like, oh, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He's a manager. This is the...
And I guess you can ascribe it to like, he's, you know, because his daughter's gone.
Hyper-competitive?
Well, he's hyper-competitive, partly. And then also because his daughter's gone, like he's just in not a good place right now. But I don't know. He just did it so easily.
That's charitable.
I think he's just not a great guy. Or, you know, power corrupts whatever little power it is.
Power corrupts, absolutely. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But yeah, what I was saying is that when he's like, oh, I'll let them meet 2 nights in a row, Lem's like, oh man, I can't. It's my mom's birthday. And then as soon as he's like, I can't miss Medieval Fight Club, people will start. That's how rumors start. And then he's like, is it weird to bring my mom to Medieval Fight Club? And then he does a beat and he's like, yeah, it's weird. So good. And then the other really funny line from that same space was actually when we go back to Linda being anxious about Veronica confessing to her. She's like, why do I even drink at any of these things? I always get laid or fired. And then I think it's Len who's like, or Phil, one of them's like, I got to start drinking. I like those lines. Beautiful work.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
there is a lot of comedy in this episode, despite the like inherent darkness of talking about like a boss having control over you. But yeah, they have Ted try to fight the big guy, and then he uses a real sword and gets kicked out. And Phil and them want to get rid of him, and they want to start going back to Trains Club now because Ted ruined Medieval Fight Club. And you get that awesome line where Lem is like, we got to go back to Trains Club. I have a fair chance of being the first black mayor of Tiny Town.
That's so funny.
That's a top tier line. That's one of the best.
yeah.
That's really good.
And then, yeah, just Veronica being mean to Linda. Like, again, this episode doesn't, like, end that nicely. If anything, I thought it was super weird that we're into the credits and we get Linda in deciding to join Medieval Fight Club because Veronica doesn't want to apologize to her or whatever. So we get a couple, like, seconds of her, like, donning a weapon and then, like, spinning around and grunting. And I'm like, why did you go through the effort to do this?
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because clearly they shot it separately from all those other scenes. There was nobody else in the room. It was just like Phil, Lem, and Ted were like, hey, you want to come swing swords in the basement or whatever?
Yeah.
And I don't know, the outfit that they put her in kind of was like...
It's very Xena.
Yeah.
Xena or like Leia in episode 6 or something where it's like, what are we doing right now? Better Off Ted? Come on. So...
We don't need to make them...
It's also kind of a weird thing where it's like, you can resolve all of your conflicts by just using physical violence and aggression to take it out on someone unrelated.
After Ted had just learned that was like the thing that he did wrong this week.
Yeah.
they all think like, well, hey, maybe it'll work for Linda.
Yeah.
It's also so fun to me that like the episode ends with or you know, part of the episode ends with Ted being crowned king and then assassinated.
Totally off screen.
Yes.
Yeah, which I got a kick out of that one. I thought that was a really cool way to end it. Although, yeah, it's like, again, it's a very dark way to deal with that.
It's funny though.
Better Off Ted like kind of plays around in that dark space though in a fun way. That's what I like about it a lot.
Yeah.
Corporate culture is inherently kind of fucked up if you think about it. I have a lot of stray lines from this episode.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to go first though?
I have 3 things. The Viridian Dynamics commercial I thought was okay, but I did like the line, "Without bosses, we'd be like these worms. Disgusting."
It's like bad B-roll of worms, like gross.
Yeah. I laughed.
Listen to your boss and don't question them. Otherwise, you're no better than a worm.
Yeah, I laughed out loud at the line that you put as Jim's introduction, where Phil's like, he could bring us a lot of street crud. He just delivers it so well.
It's like effort. Like he's always known that to be the way you say it.
Yeah. What's that actor's name? Oh, I want to check it.
Phil?
Yeah. Who plays Phil? What's his name?
That's Jonathan Slavin.
Yeah, Jonathan Slavin. I'm not sure. Sorry, Jonathan.
I'm gonna say Slavin.
Yeah, always does those like creaky deliveries, and they're so good. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Phil's...
Oh shit! Sorry, just confirmed. Jonathan Slavin is a gay man in real life. Fucking hell yeah!
Oh, okay.
Sorry, just got excited.
When Ted wins his first fight in the Fight Club, the king says, "I declare Ted the victor and Victor the loser."
It's like a Simpsons line.
Yeah.
And then my last thing that I have here is that Phil's mug that Linda drinks out of says "sexy scientist" on it. I noticed.
Sexy scientist.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
It's a show with very good set dressing.
Yes.
And salad dressing.
And
What?
very good. I forgot to say, but the outfits are always really great. In the first half, Veronica's first outfit, where it's like the magenta turtleneck and the black blazer to show like she's very intimidating, was like, damn, that's a cool outfit. But yeah, lots of good
really
costume design in the show too.
Agreed. We were talking about Phil not liking his wife earlier, and Ted is like, "Oh yeah, Stacy's out in Botswana," and then you just get Phil to the side. I wish my wife would go to Botswana. I just love his deliveries always.
Yeah.
When Linda and Veronica are in a meeting and she's like revealing all the secrets to her, she's like, what are we going to do? Like, I'm going to have to take the project. And she's like, no, it's okay. I'll take you to someplace for breakfast. Somewhere where the meal names don't end in slam. Subtle but not so subtle dig at Denny's, but it's go off, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the Tiny Town line was hilarious. And actually, I think that was my last one. Yeah. Strong episode. Again, we're hitting the satire. I feel like the show is just like firing on its cylinders now, right? Like, one of the benefits of a show being this short is you don't have like chaff, I think. But we've had some episodes that were like, but not like.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can say for these two that we watched this week is that their point is so much more specific and nuanced than the point that was being made by the last two, where the last two it was like, corporations don't care about you. That's the theme. And in this one, it's like, you know, your bosses are going to manipulate your personal relationship. And that's like a much more precise, satirical conversation to have. So I think that's what made both these episodes pretty strong.
Plus, Jay Harrington is just such a dreamboat.
He's deeply handsome. As a previous episode said, he seems like the kind of guy who either is saving like a kitten from a tree or is a superhero or like he just.
I think I love that cast all around. Just so good.
But I think that's what we have for You Are the Boss of Me.
Yeah.
Which is not a title that rolls off the tongue well. But Magellan, can you tell me what we're watching next time on Better Off Chatz?
I would love to. Next time on Better Off Chatz, we're watching Season 1, Episodes 9 and 10 of Better Off Ted. First, we're watching Episode 9, Bio Shuffle. Tensions mount when Ted, Linda, and Veronica end up sharing offices. And then, yeah, that's kind of fun. And then Season 1, Episode 10, Trust and Consequences. Viridian tries to make Linda a scapegoat when the company is sued.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's going to get kind of tense.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jim, for joining us. I'm happy that we finally got you on main feed chats.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so in a couple different ways. You can email us at chatspod@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter and DM us or message us, or just look at our tweets over at Chatspod on Twitter. Both of those are spelled CHATZPOD. And you've heard a couple people come on and be guests. If you want to be a guest and talk about an episode of Better Off Ted with us, all you got to do is ask. We don't know. We can't read your mind. But if you want to do it, come on.
Someday.
One day we'll be able to read your mind with the whatever surgery or whatever was in the episode. I forget.
Yeah, brain surgery makes it everything taste sweet, and we can read your mind.
Yeah.
Side effects.
But until then, just let us know. If you want to watch old shows that we covered and listen to us cover them with a community of fellow listeners, you can do so on Reddit at reddit.com/r/chatspod. And then if you want to help the show get found, you can rate us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. And then if you want to support the show with money, cash money, you can do so over at Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod. And you can back us at $1, $3, or $5 a month. This month of October, if you liked the guests that you heard on this episode, actually both of them were on a bonus episode this month on our Patreon. Jim was with us earlier this month doing a pilot chats discussion of Full Metal Alchemist and Cowboy Bebop. And Six was on a Chats Nights little discussion episode with us, just talking about stuff and then talking about pies and which pies are the best pies.
Pies and stuff.
Pies and stuff. So you can listen to both of those over on the Patreon. And then pretty soon we're going to be watching Young Frankenstein for Halloween. So that's going to be exciting as well. But that's it for the show plugs. Now we get into chatsums, little things that we like to eat. And when we eat them, it sounds like this.
Yummy.
Just wanted to make sure the bumper could fit in. You're welcome. So they're little things, little piece of pop culture that you can pop into your mouth between now and next time. Jim, are you ready? You got one?
Yeah. So, okay. So in the Journal of Chemical Physics B, look for the impact of PDMS-based microfluidics on Belousov-Zhabotinsky chemical oscillators.
Oh, yeah. That's good
shit.
I like his earlier stuff myself, but
Yeah, back when it was about the music.
I like when it was about the dry oscillators, but that's good.
Can I just write that as read physics journals?
Yeah, read physics journals.
Okay. Thank you, because I didn't want to. Maybe I'll transcribe what you just said or something. We'll figure it out.
Oh, and the other thing, something a little bit more serious. Key and Peele is leaving Hulu soon, so if you haven't got a chance to look at that, I definitely would suggest taking a nibble.
That's a good rec.
I miss Key and Peele a lot. I might be due for a rewatch.
Well, you've got 12 days at the time of the recording, so
Let's go. Episode 1, beginnings. No.
Origins. Yeah.
Alan, what about you?
So I've been reading a lot more lately. I'm trying to, and I just finished an indie comic 2 days ago that I really think more people should check out. It's called Gleam, Gleem, and it's by and I might be pronouncing their last name wrong, Freddie Carrasco. Basically, Gleam is a 3-part series of short stories about young kids, particularly young children. Black and Hispanic kids who are living in a futuristic, like cool Blade Runner-y city, discovering themselves, going through identity crises, trying to help their friends and their community, and like learning about the world around them and how the world ended up the way it is. It's really fascinating. It's kind of hard to describe because it is very light on dialogue. It's like ostensibly a 200-page graphic novel with minimal text. But all of the stories are really affecting despite not having a lot of dialogue. The art is incredible. It's got this very unique sort of like line art style. The art actually reminds me a little bit of Satoshi Kon and like his work on Paranoia Agent. So if you are into that sort of like more realistic art style in a way, or like exaggerated rather art style, I really recommend you check out Gleam. You can get it digitally or physically. I bought a physical copy and I love it. It's a good like coffee table book. It's got amazing art and you should check it out. You can buy that anywhere online. It's called Gleam. Mitchell, what about you?
It's a hard week for me to think of a chatsum because I've just been like doing a lot of playing the chatsums that I've talked about the past couple of weeks. Or listening to podcasts I've talked about before or whatever, but I've been kind of jumping around YouTube suggestions, and I came across this one channel called Jay's Reviews, and I'm just going to shout Jay's Reviews out because I did watch the entire, like, how long is it? Hour-long video where he talks about how much he loves Sonic Adventure 2, and I did watch the 50-minute video where he talks about what makes Sonic Heroes good, so I'd give a shout out there to Jay's Reviews. Just one of those channels where he like goes in depth and does big old video essays about nostalgia stuff. So yeah,
these look fun. It's Jay, the letter J, by the way.
Yeah, Jay Possessive Reviews.
Love it. These look really fun. I might watch some of these.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, Majan, thank you for that. I always appreciate more video essays to add to my endless queue. Sorry, I was just thinking about the trial of the Chicago 7 movie and how sad I am. I'm frustrated I am that they gave that to Aaron Sorkin.
Boy. I did see I saw a video where he was giving writing advice, and one of the questions was like, how do you write like characters who are, from a different group of people or whatever than you are, and imagine them in terms of their joys and not just their like suffering or whatever. Yeah. And he had a very clumsy answer to that question.
Oh, love it. I'm not surprised. I'm probably gonna end up watching that. It's the sad thing too, right? Like Sacha Baron Cohen, Aaron Sorkin, it's got a lot of talent in it. Sorry. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Thank you to Jim again for joining us on this podcast. Thank you to Magellan as well for being the rock to my hard place. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to this episode of Better Off Chatz. Peace.